Hello, welcome to RC Video Reviews. Today we're taking a look at the 80mm Futura V3 from FMS. Now before we get into the content, I do need to let you know that this video is sponsored by FMS, who sent me the Futura for review. If you'd like to buy one for yourself, I'll have an affiliate link in the description. If you use my affiliate link, the channel gets a little bit of a kickback, but that's paid by FMS, not by you. Some of you might also point out that as of this video, they're out of stock, but I've been told by FMS they anticipate having more stock of this airplane before the Black Friday event. All right, with that out of the way, let's get into specifications. The wingspan on this plane is 41.7 inches. The overall length is 46.1, so this one's a little bit longer than the wingspan. The flying weight is around 2,500 grams. The motor is a 2000 kV 3665. The ESC is 100 amps. And there are 8 13-gram metal analog servos inside. Metal analog servos, interesting, not digital. It requires a 6-channel radio. The center of gravity is between 100 and 105 millimeters from the leading edge, and it is an 80mm ducted fan with 12 blades. FMS recommends a 6-cell 4035C battery, and the anticipated flight time is 3 to 5 minutes. The experience level on this plane by FMS, they say intermediate, and assembly time 15 minutes, and I can tell you after my first look, I believe this. The wing loading is 113.6 grams over dm squared, and the wing area is 22 dm squared, 341 square inches. And finally, this model does come equipped with the Reflex V2 gyro, which will be pre-programmed for the model right out of the box. You don't even really have to do anything. I left the model in the box so you can get an idea how well it's packed, and one thing I can say is that FMS does an excellent job using styrofoam and packing materials to ensure separation so your model is not damaged during shipping. With that out of the way, let's get it out of the box. We'll start out with the manual. This is the typical FMS manual. It's a black and white affair, but they're typically very thorough. They've got nice diagrams showing you what parts are involved in the assembly and how to put everything together with nice exploded engineering diagrams. And they give you some information about how to set up your receiver and what to look for when you're setting up your model, including your control throws and rates and your center of gravity. So the manual is just fine. And then in terms of language, you've got English, German, French, and let's see, what else? Chinese. I don't really ever have any problem with the manual. I mean, honestly, it's not like you need much of the plane this simple anyway. There's also an addendum for the Reflex V2 gyro walking you through how to set up the Reflex and how your different connectors work. So if you're not familiar with how to do these things, that information is included in the manual as well. Let's take a look at this awesome looking fuselage. I'll tell you guys, when I first saw a Futura jet fly, it was at Jets over Lakeland, and I was just enamored with the plane because it flew just amazing. And of course, the ones we saw, they had thrust vectoring and they were 3D, big composite planes. They had to be upwards of 20 grand or more. I really don't know how much those big turbines go for, but that's the first time I saw one of these models, and I was really impressed with the way it flew. And as I look at the paint scheme on the side, I look for little defects in the paint. I don't really see anything. Very crisp lines right down the side, so where the gray meets the red, it's very crisp. The Futura graphic is just perfect. And even the pinstriping on the side, all very nicely done. Right here on the side, there's this plastic shoulder section where the wing connects. Notice you've got a quick connector for your servos right there, so you don't need to fiddle with wires. The spar tube goes right through the center, and then there are a couple of plastic retainers with brass nuts or brass inserts that you screw your wing screws into. So very nice, simple, elegant design, easy to put together at the field, no problem. And then on the top, you can see where the horizontal and vertical stabilizers screw in. The servo wiring is right there, ready for you to make your connections. Make note there are 2 elevator connections and 1 rudder connection. And then on the top, you've got 1, 2, 3 screw holes for the vertical stabilizer and 1, 2, 3 screw holes for the horizontal stabilizer and elevator. And here's a look at the starboard side of the fuselage. I really like the paint scheme on this, man. It's not overdone. It's just really very modern, very clean looking paint scheme. And as I continue to look for paint flaws, I do see a little bit of variation in this red line where the red meets the white, but the rest of it looks very crisp. Where the gray meets the red is perfect, and it's perfect down here, and they use decal pinstriping for the black. So no issues there at all. Very crisp lines on the side of the plane. It is absolutely beautiful. Nice paint scheme. To get into the canopy, there's a latching mechanism right here on top. You just slide that back and you can lift the canopy up. I like to put a little bit of tape right there on the back so I'm not constantly squeezing the foam with my fingers, because eventually that causes wrinkles and damages the paint. So I will put a little piece of tape there. Also notice there's a plastic insert which will keep the foam from getting damaged over time. So nice job on that part. And here's a look inside. Plenty of room for the battery in there. All of your connections to the Reflex V2 are right here. You've got your S-Bus cable, rudder, elevator, aileron, and throttle, and then flap and gear right here on the side. The battery tray is already installed with a couple of battery loops, and they include some Velcro for your battery. A few other things I'd point out: there's an EC5 connector to the ESC. I also 3D printed this receiver mount. I found this on Thingiverse, so it's a very easy print. You just print it face down like that, and this is good for putting your receiver right on top of the gyro in the back, and it keeps things out of the way. So it just kind of tucks everything in the back and keeps you from having to run wires up to the front past your battery. So nice little device. I'll leave a link for that in the description if you'd like to print one for yourself. And then while we're on the subject of 3D prints, I also printed this little exhaust flange. I actually use the same one on my Avanti, and that'll be glued on the back. So here's the exhaust, and here's my exhaust flange. The idea is I'll just glue that right on the back, and it just kind of gives it a nice little finished look. I like the way that looks, so I'll glue that on. And it's very lightweight. It adds almost nothing to the tail. And then finally for the canopy, it's all grayed out. You can't see underneath, it's just gray, which I think is kind of cool looking, man. It's different. You know, it's a little different from the normal clear canopy or smoke canopy. So I like it quite a bit. Next up is the wing. There is a plastic mating surface for the fuselage to the wing. There's the quick connector for the electronics that are in the wing, including your navigation lights, your landing gear, flaps, and your aileron servo. So all of that is connected right here. And then on the bottom, you can see all of those servos are already installed. Very little work for you to do on this one. Really, plug and play is an understatement. This will assemble very, very quickly. Just nothing to do. No wiring to fiddle with. It's just all done for you. Sometimes you have to center these control surfaces if they're not quite where you want them to be with your radio, but that's a fairly minor task. And also notice they use ball links. I actually like that. That's a little bit of an upgrade because it reduces tension on the servo and they're captured. So it's a nice option over the clevises that require the heat shrink tubing. So very well done, and they use decals over the servo channels so you don't even see the servo wires. And the gear tucked very nicely into the wing. There's no protrusion at all, it's very clean. There's a look at the trailing edge. Everything looks very straight. There's a little bit of design washout on the tips, but that's a design feature, not a flaw. And then there's a look at the navigation lights right there on the wingtip. Here's a look at the port wing. We'll take a look at this one for QA purposes, and I think everything looks pretty good, except right here, there's a little bit of overspray down there on the bottom, just a slight amount. So whatever they're using for masking, they've got some overspray there. There's a look at the wingtip, same deal, a little bit of washout on the tip, but that's a design feature, not a flaw. It's supposed to be that way. And here's a look at the bottom of the wing. One thing I just noticed on the control horns, they're actually color-coded for the section of wing where they are installed. So white in the white section, red in the red section. That's nice attention to detail. I like that kind of thinking. Good job, FMS. So other than just a slight amount of overspray, I don't see any other problems with the wing. It looks very straight. The trailing edge looks very straight. Again, a little bit of washout, but that's by design. Here's a look at the horizontal stabilizer, and as I mentioned when we looked at the fuselage, the servos are already installed. There's your port servo and starboard servo and the two leads that will connect to the wires coming out of the tail section of the fuselage. And then your control horns are installed along with the control rods and the servos. They do a nice job blending everything together with the decals and the paint. I think it's just a nice touch, and you don't see this glaring black servo. It's all blended in, so it looks really nice. Here's a look at the top of the horizontal stabilizer. Again, 3 screws, 1, 2, and 3, and that's done. You're installed. There's the trailing edge. No issues there. Everything looks nice and straight and clean. And there is the leading edge. I don't see any paint problems here. It looks very crisp. And here's a look at the vertical stabilizer. Remember, this design is done under a license agreement with Tomahawk Aviation. So there's the Tomahawk logo on the back with the number 10. And I don't see any issues with the vertical stabilizer. Everything looks straight and clean. The paint looks good. And then on the trailing edge, everything looks very straight. So no problems with the foam there. And then one wire coming off for the rudder. And then you've got the plastic captures for the screws right there, and then one up front, another plastic capture for a screw. So yeah, the assembly on this is gonna be ridiculously easy. In fact, here's the bag of screws. I counted them up, there's only 11 in there. 4 for the wings, 6 for the empennage, and you get 1 spare. So very quick assembly on this plane. You will literally spend more time setting up your radio than you will setting up the plane. You could set this up at the field, no problem. You wanted to bring the box to the field and set it up for the first time, no problem at all, as long as you know what you're doing with your radio. That wraps up my first look at the FMS 80mm Futura. I can tell you after putting the wings and the stabilizers on, it really looks kind of cool, man. I like the way this plane looks. I always have. From the first time I saw it, I thought it looked pretty neat. I hope it flies just as well. I do have high expectations for this plane. I'm a little curious about the use of a 3300 milliamp hour battery on an 80mm EDF, so we'll see. Hopefully we get decent flight time out of it. In terms of in-air characteristics, I expect a lot out of this plane. I expect it to fly straight and be very precise. We'll see. Keep an eye on the channel for the maiden. I'll get this put together and over to the field just as soon as I can. Thanks to FMS for sending this model out for review. If you like this kind of content, make sure you smash that thumbs up button, subscribe and hit the bell so you know when new videos hit the channel. That's all I've got for today. Take it easy and go fly something.